All right. Good morning. Welcome
Morning.
back. Hey, everyone. It's live with the Estradas again. It's Tuesday, so that's our real estate tip Tuesday that we're bringing to you. And we're talking about why testing the market doesn't work. So, this is the number one mistake sellers are making right now. It's testing the market instead of entering with a strategy. So, we're seeing this every single day. People are curious. They want to see what their home might sell for. And the problem is they're not fully committed to selling. And that's a pretty big mistake. And I want to explain why that approach can actually cost you time and money. So, Tiana, you've been out there in the market for a long time. Do you see this occasionally?
All the time.
All right. Well, before we get started into some of the meat of this conversation, comment below and just tell us where you're watching this from. And if you're thinking about selling this year, comment value. And we'd love to talk to you about what your home is worth in today's market and talk about a real strategy. So let's get into this. What does testing the market mean? And we see this all the time. We go on appointments and we talk to home sellers, and it usually sounds like this. They want to see, let's price it at this X amount, and let's see what happens. Pricing too high just to see. And what that tells us is they're not mentally committed to selling it in this market. And if it was the COVID market that we experienced in 2000, 2001, 2000, come on, hey, 2020 and 2021, that probably would have worked. We would put a sign in the yard, and by the time we got back to the office, we'd have 3 offers waiting for us. And that's just not the market today. So and
Well,
the other
honestly,
problem
that's not that really wasn't the market at any time. That was, I don't know what that was, but that was not an indicator of any kind of healthy or normal market whatsoever.
right. That's true. That's true. And the other problem that we see is if we do, if we agree and we agree to list at a higher price, what happens is we wait too long to adjust. And right now, it's, the first couple weeks on the market is the best time to have it, because the listing's new, it's fresh, it's got a buzz. Buyers are always watching for new listings to come on the market. There's excitement there. And, there's that saying, and I'm going to age myself, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And that's so true in real estate. Once you're a new listing and you let a couple weeks come, roll by and it's still not sold, well, at that point, you're not a new listing anymore. You're almost an aged listing. So,
Yep.
Anything you want to add on that one?
No, from a buyer side, just to talk about the psychology that goes behind pricing incorrectly and what it does in a buyer's mind is with the buyers that I have looking right now, when they come to me and they say, hey, I see this one's been on the market for a little bit. What's wrong with it? And I have to tell them, I'll look at it, I'll look into it. And it hasn't gone under contract and come back on, which would tell me there's some sort of a condition issue. It's the listing is chasing the market. They started out too high and they just can't catch up. But when you see those longer days on market because you didn't adjust quickly enough, buyers are automatically thinking there's something majorly wrong with your house, which means you're going to get an even lower price probably down the road.
Right. And I mean, buyers are super savvy these days.
Mm-hmm.
We used to go on appointments and we'd have all the information. Now we go on the appointments and the buyer has all the information. I mean, there's so much data out there, and buyers pull their own comparable sales. They know what homes in the neighborhood are selling for. And if as a seller, if you think you're going to pull one over on these buyers, you're not. They know what the homes are worth. They pull their own comps. They have all the data, and they're very super smart. So if you're out of line on pricing, it they're going to know it. They're either not going to show up, or they're going to go to the home and think that they're going to be able to beat you down on price.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the reality of it. They also, when you see an overpriced listing, at least we do this too, when we're looking at new listings on the market, and we know what that neighborhood's worth, and we see one come over and it's, X% over that, we're like, what do we say? We're like, oh,
No way. Like, there's no way.
There's no way. There's no, like, that's the first words that come out of our mouth. It's either an inexperienced agent, or it's a seller that's just not serious about selling their home.
Right. And I think the unfortunate thing too becomes, and we talk about this all the time when we do see those over higher price listings, is it's not just enough. I think sellers think, well, I'll find somebody. I'll find somebody who's going to offer me what I'm asking. And that's great if you do. That doesn't mean that's still not the answer. It still has to appraise. And we see that all the time. Just because you say it's worth that much, and just because you have a buyer that's willing to pay that much, if an appraiser comes in and the data isn't there and it doesn't appraise at that value, then what do you do? So it's not just about trying to get you your price. It's trying to get you a price that will get to the closing table is the major thing that people don't give enough weight to.
Right. So sellers that overprice, they think they're going to find a buyer that's willing to overpay.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to find a buyer that doesn't need to have an appraisal. So that's a cash buyer. So you're going to try and pull one over on a cash buyer that doesn't want an appraisal and wants to pay too much.
As a needle in a haystack, if ever.
Yeah. And usually the cash buyers are the ones that want to beat you up the most, because they think cash is king. So how are you going to get them to overpay when they're already going in thinking that they can negotiate?
Mm-hmm.
It's a very difficult task. Very difficult task. So I want to stay on track here, and I want to just talk about how the market responds. When you enter the market with the right strategy, you're going to get a response immediately. And what that looks like is you're going to have showings. You're going to have 5 to 7 showings a week in the first couple weeks. And if you don't, there's a problem. You're going to get agents calling you, or buyers calling you and saying, hey, I'm interested. How many offers do you have? What's the seller situation? What's the seller looking for in a good offer? Those are all indications that you're priced correctly in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we do when we're representing a buyer and a buyer's interested, and we're like, hey, this seems like a pretty good, well-priced listing or priced below market. We're going to contact the agent, see what kind of interest they have. And then when we're on the seller side, we're welcoming those calls. We know that, after the first few showings, 3 to 5 showings, if we're not getting those kind of phone calls, we know that we're out of bounds on price. So anything you want to add there?
No, I just love when we do, like you said, when we get those calls and the first thing the agents say is, I'm sure you've been answering calls all day. That is what I want to hear. I want to be answering those calls all day. And side note, on the buy side, when you have a great price listing and it is creating buzz, if your agent isn't answering the phone or responding, because I get that with my buyers a lot, it is super frustrating and sets the tone of how this transaction is going to go. And a lot of times it makes the buyer or their agent want to move on. They're excited. They want answers. And if they can't get those answers, they're going to go find somewhere where they can get those answers, no matter how great your price is. So just that's my little side note.
Well, and I'm going to say something that's unpopular. So brace yourself. When we start to get our return phone calls after 5 p.m., what that tells us is that real estate agent doesn't take their business or career seriously, which means they probably have another job and we're having to wait until they get out of their job after 5 to get our messages returned. And I think that's just a huge disservice to their seller. So I'll just leave it at that. I'm not going to go any deeper. That's just my pet peeve. So
it's not a knock. Real estate's hard.
Yeah.
Doing what we do is hard. And especially right now, it takes all hands on deck, and it is a full-time job. And it can cost buyers and sellers money if stuff is not being handled during normal business hours.
We'll just leave it at that.
Yep.
All right. So the bottom line on this, how the market responds tab is we want the market chasing your listing. We don't want your listing chasing the market. So in conclusion here, some real takeaways. I've got know your bottom line there. Have your real estate agent do a net sheet for you so you know exactly after all fees and commissions and things like that, what are you going to walk away with? And I'm not saying really lead with that number, but kind of a worst case scenario, after all those fees, what are you going to walk away with? And if that's a number that you can live with and it makes it worthwhile to sell, and maybe that pays off some debt or gets you to the next chapter, those are pretty huge wins in this market. And I don't want to say this. I'm a firm believer in knowing your bottom line and working from that number up. I'm going to do a little shameless plug for OfferX because that's just what, I co-founded that and I firmly believe in that strategy. And let's price it really low. Let's price it artificially low. And maybe that's your bottom line, or maybe it's a buck above that. I don't know. But why don't we start there and let the market respond with, huge buzz and excitement, build it up from there, get multiple offers, have buyers compete against each other, and work your way up versus, listing high and coming down. So
well, I've said this over and over in other lives and in my appointments. I love that you think it's worth that much, but what you think it's worth does not matter. And sometimes even what I say it's worth does not matter. Sometimes I'm wrong. The only thing that's ever right is the market. And I think our biggest challenge right now is multiple things, but there's not one rule applies to all in real estate. Someone who's owned a property for 10, 15 years is not going to have the same strategy as someone who's owned it for 2. Timing matters. Time does the heavy lifting in real estate. And I think it's hard when people use the comparables and think they're going to make all of this money based on the house that sold down the street, but they don't know that those people have been there for 20 years and their strategy was different. And these people just bought 2 years and now they need to move. You're not going to have the same strategy. You're not going to have the same margin. And I think that is a difficult thing to educate people on. And the other thing that we hear all the time is, well, I don't want to give it away. I'm just giving money away. Unless that money is sitting in your bank account right now, you're not giving it away. It's not yours to give yet. And so working on those 2 things and that mentality, it's not comfortable, but that is something that has to be talked about every time when we sit down with the seller. Because it is, like I said, it's not a one size fits all. I bought it here. It appreciated this much. This is how much I should get. That's not the real world.
All right. So the real takeaway is know your bottom line, enter with the strategy. And the last thing is adjust quickly based on the feedback. So if you're getting feedback that you're priced too high, you might want to listen to that. And on the other end, if you're not getting any feedback, that is still feedback.
Yeah. That's hard. Our sellers would love to get feedback every time. And there's just sometimes, I will say it, a lot of us agents really suck at giving valuable feedback. It is valuable. Even if you tell me the house is horrible and it's overpriced, I need that feedback. But a lot of us don't give it. But when you don't get it, it wasn't worth someone taking the time to give you the feedback. And that's your feedback.
That means they just moved on and forgot about your property.
Right.
So,
right.
All right. So motivated sellers are winning in this market, and motivation comes in different forms. It could be paying off debt. That's motivation. It could be a job transfer. It could be you just got married. It could be you just had another kid. There's all kinds of different motivations. So, we
You're
talk
tired
about
of the rent amount.
What's that?
You're tired of the rent payments.
You're right.
Some of these rents are insane.
Right. And different motivations, come in different forms, and really know your why for why you're moving. And if if that number doesn't work for you, or that price doesn't work for you, keep the house. Maybe that's the best bet. But why waste your time? Why waste 3, 6, 9 months on the market if it's unrealistic? That's a lot of work for sellers. I mean, you're having to keep the house clean. You're having to make the beds. You're having to, pick up all the toys, and you have to be available for showings at any given time. And I mean, that's a big pain in the butt. So why would you want to go through that if, your strategy is this number? And if that's not the number, then don't take the chance, because this market is going to eat you up. And why waste the time? So,
and I won't say this never happens, because never say never, but very rarely, if ever, do I see a property that stayed at the same price for 60, 90 days and sells at that price.
We've yet to see one in 27 years. Yeah.
So I'm just going to leave that out there.
All right. So comment value. If you want a free home valuation or strategy consultation, we'd love to help you out. And if that's everything, then we'll see everybody tomorrow. All right.
Have a good Tuesday.